Good evening, everybody. Today, I wanted to go over a lesson in the first Pew English textbook, which may have a relevance for the issue of land grabbing, which is so prevalent in society these days. So, the lesson in the first Pew textbook is The Gentleman of the Jungle by Jomo Kenyatta. Okay, so Jomo Kenyatta was the founder of the country of Kenya, and Kenya was a colony of the Europeans, and to get freedom from these colonial powers, the natives of Kenya had to undergo a lot of trials. So, this lesson is a fable. Fable means it uses animals as characters, and the story has a moral at the end. So, in the story, the animals in this represent the colonial powers, and the man in the story represents the Kenyans, right? So, on the one hand, what it means is that these colonial powers, they are so overcome by their thirst for power, for land, for wealth of the natives, that they become like animals, and the man is the human, right? So, what does the fable, what does the story say? So it says, the introduction. In the late 19th century, the chief European powers divided Africa among themselves. So the chief European powers were the countries of Belgium, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, England. So they went to Africa and took various parts of Africa as their own colonies. So they divided Africa among themselves. They could do this because European arms were superior and because the African chiefs did not understand the meaning of the treaties they were asked to sign. So this is the modus operandi of the colonial powers. First of all, their arms were superior. Arms means the weapons they had, the guns, the cannon, and the rifles. They were superior, and all the Africans had were their spears and their wooden shields, which were no match for the European arms. So because of the arms of the Europeans, the colonial powers were able to subjugate the continent of Africa. And also because the African chiefs did not understand the meaning of the treaties they were asked to sign. So these treaties, they were voluminous documents, page upon page of legales, that is legal terms, which the Africans, the native Africans, had no hope of understanding. So they were asked to sign these treaties, these voluminous legal documents, and they just had to surrender all the land that they had to the colonial powers. As a result, Africans lost the lands they had traditionally lived on and cultivated. So up to that time, up to the advent of the colonial powers, up to the time the colonial powers entered, they were an agrarian economy. They cultivated the lands and they lived on the produce of the land, and essentially after the soil was exhausted, they moved on to greener pastures. So they had to lose all these lands. They had to lose their happy, way of life once the Europeans came in. Their attitude towards European expansion is made clear in the following fable, which reflects the attitude of the Kikuyu people of Kenya towards European laws and commissions. So the attitude of the native Africans towards the expansion, that is in quotation marks, expansion means that they're expanding their territories. The attitude of the native Africans towards this European expansion is made clear in this fable. And this fable reflects the attitude of the Kikuyu people of Kenya toward European laws and commissions. So the laws, the legal, uh, you know, uh, entities which made the Africans give up all their property, right? So next we come to the story itself after this introduction. So as I said, it's a fable. Uh, so what does it say? Once upon a time, that's how it begins. Once upon a time, like all fairy stories. Once upon a time, an elephant made friendship with a man. So an elephant, that is, the elephant represents the colonial power. It becomes friendly with the man. The man represents the Africans. One day, a heavy thunderstorm broke out. The elephant went to his friend, who had a little hut at the edge of the forest, and said to him, "My dear good man, will you please let me put my trunk inside your hut to keep it out of this torrential rain?" So there was a downpour, heavy downpour one day. It was a thunderstorm, and a lot of rain and lightning and thunder and wind and so on and so forth. The elephant could not bear this attack of the elements. So he went to his friend the man. The man was sheltering inside a little hut at the edge of the forest, and the elephant said to the man, "My dear good man, will you please let me put my trunk inside your hut to keep it out of this torrential rain?" So the elephant spoke to the man very politely, okay, and it insinuates itself into its good affections. So it becomes friends with him, and it asks just space enough for his trunk. "Can I keep my trunk inside your hut to keep it out of this torrential rain?" So the man, seeing what situation his friend was in, replied, "My dear good elephant, my hut is very small, but there is room for your trunk and myself. Please put your trunk in gently." So the man was sympathetic towards the elephant. His friend, the Africans, were sympathetic towards the colonial powers, and they sort of very humanely they allowed the elephant to put its trunk into the hut. So he asked it to put the trunk in gently. So it asked for a little space, and then the elephant thanked his friend. So the elephant was grateful, and he said to his friend, "You have done me a good deed, and one day I shall return your kindness." So it says that his kindness will be returned one day. But what followed? So what happened next? Up to this moment, the situation has been on friendly terms, all very polite and cultured. But what followed? As soon as the elephant put his trunk inside the hut, slowly he pushed his head inside and finally flung the man out in the rain, and then lay down comfortably inside his friend's hut, saying, "My dear good friend, your skin is harder than mine, and as there is not enough room for both of us, you can afford to remain in the rain while I am protecting my delicate skin from the hailstorm." Right? So, it's a classic case of give an inch and take a mile. So, what the elephant does is, it gently puts its trunk in, then it puts its head in, then finally the whole body in. So, there was not enough space for the elephant and the man in the hut. So, the elephant flung, or he throws the man out into the rain. And this is the way the European powers grabbed the territories of the Africans. First, they were friendly, they seemed to be obliging, they came, and the Africans humanely let the colonial powers overrun their land. So The elephant says, "My dear good friend, your skin is harder than mine." So, the skin is harder than mine means the elephant skin is very thick. It's very thick, but we must remember that the elephant represents the Europeans. So, the Europeans cannot stand the tropical climate of Africa. Their skin is too delicate. So, the elephant says, "Your skin is harder than mine." So, the Africans can bear the torrential rain, but the Europeans can't. And it says, "As there is not enough room for both of us, you can afford to remain in the rain while I'm protecting my delicate skin from the hailstorm." And so that's over. The colonial powers have occupied the land. The man, seeing what his friend had done to him, started to grumble. The man, that is the Africans, they become discontented. They start to grumble. That is, they mutter angrily to themselves. Animals in the nearby forest heard the noise and came to see what was the matter. So, the animals in the nearby forest came to see what was the matter because there was a quarrel brewing between the man and the elephant. All stood around listening to the heated argument between the man and his friend the elephant. So they get into a very heated argument. In this turmoil, the lion came along roaring and said in a loud voice, "Don't you all know that I am the king of the jungle? How dare anyone disturb the peace of my kingdom?" So the lion, that is the chief of the European powers, he comes and says, "Don't you know I am the king of the jungle? How dare anyone disturb the peace of my kingdom?" So this, breaking the peace of the neighborhood is against the law. So this quarrel is disturbing the peace. So he asks for an explanation, the chief of the European powers. The elephant is an animal, the lion is also an animal, so they are on the same side. On hearing this, the elephant, who was one of the high ministers in the jungle kingdom, replied in a soothing voice and said, "My lord, there is no disturbance of the peace in your kingdom. I have only been having a little discussion with my friend here as to the possession of this little hut which your lordship sees me occupying." So, again, look at the way the elephant speaks. It speaks in a very soothing voice to its superior, that is the lion. It says in a soothing voice, "My lord, there is no disturbance of peace in your kingdom. I have only a little discussion." That heated argument which they've been having, full of expletives and swear words and so on and so forth, he calls it a little discussion. And the discussion, in quotation marks, is about the possession of this little hut which your lordship sees me. So it pertains, it is relevant, it is about the land which the colonial powers are occupying. So things would have got out of hand very soon if the Africans would have soon grabbed back the land. But what is the next tactic which the colonial powers have? The tactic is the lion says he wanted to have peace and tranquility in his kingdom. He replied in a noble voice. Look at the tone of voice which he speaks in a noble voice, saying, "I command my ministers to appoint a commission of inquiry to go thoroughly into this matter and report accordingly." So this is the first step. The lion orders a commission of inquiry. Now that is it is actually a thing. A commission of inquiry means it's a legal commission. They should go thoroughly into this matter. They must examine both sides of the matter and report accordingly. So the ideal way of conducting a commission of inquiry is to be very objective. Look at both sides of the argument and evaluate the situation objectively. But the animals, that is the colonial powers, being on one side, the man really has no chance. So anyway, look at how the man reacts. The lion then turned to the man and said, "You have done well by establishing friendship with my people, especially with the elephant, who is one of my honorable ministers of state." So he praises the man for being friendly and not being antagonistic towards the colonial powers. And he says, "Do not grumble anymore. Your hut is not lost." So don't worry about it. your lands are not lost to you. Wait until the sitting of my imperial commission. That's what they call this commission. They call it the imperial commission, and there you will be given plenty of opportunity to state your case. So, in the court of law, in the legal, you'll be given plenty of opportunity to state your case. I am sure that you will be pleased with the findings of the commission. So, the judgment which you will get will be sure to please you. Okay. Uh, so the man was very pleased by these sweet words from the king of the jungle. The man feels pacified. He becomes calmer after these sweet words. So again, what the European powers are doing is they're smoothing the ruffled feathers of the natives. So they speak very sweetly to the man, that is the Africans, and innocently waited for his opportunity in the belief that naturally the hut would be returned to him. So these Africans, these native Africans, they believed that their lands would be returned to them. And next we're told, the elephant, obeying the command of his master is the lion, he got busy with other ministers to appoint the commission of inquiry. The following elders of the jungle were appointed to sit in the commission. Sit in the commission means they're going to be the judges of the both sides of the argument. They were appointed to sit in the commission. The animals were Mr. Rhinoceros, Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Alligator, the Right Honorable Mr. Fox to act as chairman, and Mr. Leopard to act as a secretary to the commission. So all the judges in this case, they're animals. They're all colonial powers. One is Mr. Rhinoceros, the other is Mr. Buffalo, the third is Mr. Alligator, the fourth is the Right Honorable Mr. Fox, and the fifth is a secretary, that is Mr. Leopard. On seeing the personnel means the people who make up the commission, the man protested and asked if it was not necessary to include in this commission a member from his side. So shouldn't there be a man on this commission, because the man will represent the Africans? But he was told that it's impossible since no one from his side was well enough educated to understand the intricacy of jungle law. So what the animals say is, what the colonial powers say is, you have no hope of understanding the intricacy, the complexities of jungle law. So no man has been well educated to understand the legal terminology, the legal S, which is involved in judging this case. So there can be no man on the commission, but he was told that is further that there was nothing to fear, for the members of the commission were all men of repute for their impartiality in justice. So he's also told there's nothing to fear, don't be afraid. All the members of the commission, all these animals, all these European powers, they are men of impartiality. They're reputed for their impartiality. They'll be very objective in judging, and as they were gentlemen chosen by God. So these judges, it goes right back to the ancient times, where it said that a judge in a court is appointed by divine power, because God himself has chosen. So similarly, all the other judges on this commission, they are gentlemen chosen by God to look after the interest of race less adequately endowed with teeth and claws. Teeth and claws means the animals, all the animals, that is Mr. Rhinoceros, Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Alligator, Mr. Fox, and Mr. Leopard, they all have teeth and claws. So they are going to look after the interest of these natives, of these native Africans. That is, the European arms were superior to the African weapons. So they were interested only in looking after the interest of the Africans. So the man might rest assured that they would investigate the matter with the greatest care and report impartially. So the man is told they would investigate the matter with the greatest care and report impartially. Impartially means judging, favoring neither one side nor the other. So finally the commission sits to take evidence. All the judges gather. The Right Honorable Mr. Elephant was first called. So Mr. Elephant is called to give his version of the argument. He came along with a superior air, brushing his tusks with a sapling which Mrs. Elephant had provided, and in an authoritative voice said, "Gentlemen of the jungle, there is no need for me to waste your valuable time in relating a story to which I'm sure you all know." So, now the elephant, Mr. Elephant, that is one of the European powers, he comes to the court in a very relaxed and very nonchalant way. He comes after a heavy dinner, and he's picking his teeth. He's brushing his tusks with a sapling which Mrs. Elephant had provided, and the he begins his speech by saying that there is no need for him to waste the valuable time of the members of the commission, because they all know the facts of the story. So I have always regarded it as my duty, he says, to protect the interests of my friends. So he speaks very in a very friendly way, speaks very sympathetically. He says it's always in his best interest to protect the rights of his friends, and this appears to have caused the misunderstanding between myself and my friend here. So this appears to have caused the misunderstanding between the Africans and the colony. He invited me to save his hut from being blown away by a hurricane. Then he tells a downright lie. He says the man invited him to protect his hut from the hurricane. Otherwise, the hut would have been blown away. With the elephant in the hut would not have blown away. As the hurricane had gained access owing to the unoccupied space in the hut, I considered it necessary in my friend's own interest to turn the undeveloped space to a more economic use by sitting in it myself, a duty which any of you would undoubtedly have performed with equal readiness in similar circumstances. So with the elephant in the hut, the wind had no chance to blow away the hut, so he was only performing his duty. So he says he developed the undeveloped space, he put it to more economic use. Okay, so these these colonial powers, they used the land for their own economic benefit. So now, after hearing the Right Honorable Mr. Elephant's conclusive evidence, so the evidence which Mr. Elephant gives is said to be conclusive. The commission called Mr. Hyena and other elders of the jungle. Those were the animals which were present at that quarrel between the man and the elephant. Mr. Hyena and other elders of the jungle, all of them animals, who all supported what Mr. Elephant had said. So they all give support. They all support what Mr. Elephant had said. Then they called the man, who began to give his own account of the dispute. So the man begins to speak, but the commission cut him short. They interrupted him, saying, "My good man, please confine yourself to relevant issues. Please confine yourself to relevant issues." So no sooner does he begin to speak than they tell him, "You are not speaking relevantly, you are speaking irrelevantly. We have already heard the circumstances from various unbiased sources. All we wish you to tell us is whether the undeveloped space in your hut was occupied by anyone else before Mr. Elephant assumed his position." So all they want to know, they say, is whether the unoccupied space in the hut was occupied by anyone else before Mr. Elephant assumed his position. Before Mr. Elephant occupied the hut, was the space in the hut occupied or not? So what it means is, if the elephant had not occupied, then the hut would have been blown away. So the elephant is right, and his point of view is correct. So the man began to say, "No, but..." So he tells the truth. No, the space in the hut was not occupied, but at this point the commission declared that they had heard sufficient evidence from both sides and retired to consider the decision. So all he says is a few words, and the commission retires to consider the judgment. They retired to consider the decision. After enjoying a delicious meal at the expense of the Right Honorable Mr. Elephant, they reached their verdict, called the man, and declared as follows. So, in the recess they had a delicious meal at the expense of Mr. Elephant. They reached their verdict, they reached their judgment, called the man, and declared as follows. "In our opinion, this dispute has arisen through a regrettable misunderstanding due to the backwardness of your ideas." And they use very long words to pronounce their judgment. And so it is a very regrettable misunderstanding, and it's caused by the backwardness of the man's ideas. We consider that Mr. Elephant has fulfilled his sacred duty of protecting your interests. So the man, Mr. Elephant, has fulfilled his sacred duty. So it's a duty given to him by God of protecting the interests of the man. That is, the colonial powers have come to protect the interests of the African. As it is clearly for your good that the space should be put to its most economic use, and as you yourself have not reached a stage of expansion which would enable you to fill it, we consider it necessary to arrange a compromise to suit both parties. So you were not large enough to occupy the full space. The hut would have been blown away, and the space should have been put to its most economic use, they say, and they feel it's necessary to arrange a compromise to suit both parties, that is, Mr. Elephant and the man. Mr. Elephant shall continue his occupation of your hut, but we give you the permission to look for a site where you can build another hut more suited to your needs, and we'll see that you are well protected. So they give the rights of occupation to the elephant. They give the rights of occupation of the African lands to the European powers, but they tell the Africans you can go to a neighboring territory and you can build a hut there, and the man has no choice. The man, having no alternative and fearing that his refusal might expose him to the teeth and claws of the members of the commission, did as they suggested. So if the man had protested, then the animals would have torn him apart with their teeth and claws. If the Africans had protested, then they would be ripped apart by the weapons of the Europeans. But no sooner had he built another hut than Mr. Rhinoceros charged in with his horn lowered and ordered the man to quit. So as soon as he had gone to a neighboring province, neighboring territory, and built a new hut, then Mr. Rhinoceros, another of the European powers, comes and occupies that. A royal commission was again appointed to look into the matter. Once again, a royal commission was appointed, and the same finding was given. So the man had to give up the rights of occupation to Mr. Rhinoceros, and he had to go to a neighboring territory. This procedure was repeated until Mr. Buffalo, Mr. Leopard, Mr. Hyena, and the rest were all accommodated with new huts. So all the European powers had their own pieces of the continent of Africa. Then the man decided he must adopt an effective method of protection, since commissions of inquiry did not seem to be of any use to him. So he decides to take matters in his own hands, and he says he must adopt an effective method of protection. He sat down and said, Ngenda ti Ndega Motegi, that's in African, which literally means there is nothing that treads on the earth that cannot be trapped. So he's going to trap the European powers. In other words, you can fool people for a time but not forever. So this smokescreen of words which the Europeans were using, they fooled the Africans for some time, but they did not fool them forever. So what did the Africans do? What did the man do? Early one morning, when the huts were already occupied by the jungle lords, they were all beginning to decay and fall to pieces, he went out and built a bigger and better hut a little distance away. So the man builds on a lavish scale. No sooner had Mr. Rhinoceros seen it than he came rushing in, only to find that Mr. Elephant was already inside, sound asleep. Mr. Leopard came in at the window. Mr. Lion, Mr. Fox, and Mr. Buffalo entered the doors, while Mr. Hyena howled for a place in the shade, and Mr. Alligator basked on the roof. So all the European powers are so attracted to this hut that the man has built, to this territory that the man has occupied, that they all come in and they wish to occupy it, all of them, all at once. Presently, they all began disputing about their rights of penetration. So they began disputing, does it belong to me, does it belong to me? They began to dispute, and from disputing they came to fighting, and while they were all embroiled together, the man set the hut on fire and burnt it to the ground, jungle lords and all. So while they were busy quarreling, the man took some firewood and set fire to the hut. Then all the jungle lords were burned down, they were reduced to ashes. Then he went home saying, peace is costly, but it's worth expense, and lived happily ever after. So this is the way that the Africans freed their country, and this fable is written by Jomo Kenyatta. So I'll just read the note on the author. Jomo Kenyatta, 1888 to 1978, was an African political leader, first president of Kenya, 1964 to 78. A Kikuyu, that is one of the natives of Kenya. He was one of the earliest and best known African nationalist leaders. He was one of the greatest African leaders. As secretary of his tribal association, he campaigned for land reform and African political rights. So this is exactly the way in which these land scammers operate. They first come and they entice you with very sweet words, and if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So this fable illustrates one of the issues which is present in society today. So thank you.